you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. And what I'm going to be talking about today is a super powerful full moon we've got coming up here on Saturday, August 9th. The full moon peaks at 12:54 a.m. Pacific time, and this takes place in the sign of Aquarius, 16, almost 17 degrees Aquarius. Now, of course, every full moon is powerful, but it's really what's going on with this full moon is an incredible connection or conversation that is going on between a bunch of very power playing celestial bodies. We've got what's called a kite. It's a combination of aspects going on between planets and celestial bodies at the time of this full moon that really, in my opinion, it's like it's opening up this opportunity for massive change as a collective, but also as individuals. And this change, in my opinion, has a lot to do with understanding a higher level of truth. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this recording, first of all, is I'm going to break down the sign of Aquarius for you, because as usual, this is the peak of a growth cycle that began approximately 6 months ago, and we had the new moon in the sign of Aquarius. Over these 6 months, we've all been experiencing this energetic force, this celestial energetic force for growth that's related to this sign of Aquarius. And this is a time to be honoring that growth. But this is also a time, as soon as the moon begins to wane, and what I mean by that is if the moon peaks at 12:54 a.m. on August 9th, Pacific time, then by 12:55 a.m. Pacific time on August 9th, the moon is starting to wane. And so we set the intentions to let go of any of this Aquarius energy that may not be serving us. Okay, so we're going to break down the sign of Aquarius for you in pretty good detail. Super, super dynamic energy. And then I'm going to pull up the chart and I'm going to show you guys these very, very prominent astrological forces, this combination of aspects that's really powerful. We're talking about a grand trine, a very strong grand air trine, and then two sextiles coming off of that. Really, really powerful stuff. So we'll go through all those other astrological forces we're receiving. And then, as usual, I want to talk about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Aquarius, because these parts of our body become sensitized anytime anything up in the sky is transiting through the sign of Aquarius. I mean, it depends on what it is that's transiting through the sign of Aquarius, but in some way, shape, or form, these parts of our body become activated, okay? And so obviously for this full moon, we've got the moon in the sign of Aquarius, but we've also got Pluto going through the sign of Aquarius for the next 19 years. So it's a good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our bodies. So I will be mentioning some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our bodies. And as usual, I will mention some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Aquarius. Okay, so let's get into this. The sign of Aquarius, this is what we call the fixed air sign. Fixed basically just means this energy likes to do things in a steadfast way. It doesn't like flip-flopping. Okay, but it's also in the element of air, has a lot to do with intellect and also socializing. All the air signs in some way, shape, or form are sort of associated with social skills, but also a certain level of intellect. The sign of Aquarius is referred to many times as the genius of the zodiac. That certainly doesn't mean everybody who is an Aquarius out there is going to be a genius, but you will notice, like the true Aquarius people, they have this incredible ability to come up with ideas, new ideas, okay? It's like the inventor of the zodiac. It's ruled, traditionally, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, which when you familiarize yourself with the mathematics of the zodiac, we can clearly see why the sign of Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. But when we think about Saturn as a very, very cold energy, and the sign of Aquarius, at least for most of us in the world, when the sun is going through the sign of Aquarius, that's the coldest time of the year, like end of January, early February. Okay, that's very Saturnian energy. But in modern astrology, it is ruled by Uranus. And I personally don't find any way I could debate that. It makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to me that Uranus rules Aquarius, because Uranus is what influences like revolutionary changes. Uranus is what influences things like ideas, or it's like inventions, or the scientist kind of energy, technology, things that are a very radical change. And this sign of Aquarius it's like the inventor of the zodiac. It's the sign that says, out with the old way of doing things, let's bring in a new way of doing things. Okay, now the sign of Aquarius, the motto for the sign of Aquarius is I know. It's this very, very intellectual energy. In fact, it's represented by the water bearer. Okay. And the water bearer, again, it's not a water sign, it's an air sign. But in astrology, water is directly associated with things like feelings and emotions. Okay. But what the water bearer, Aquarius, does, it's got the water, it detaches the emotions from the water and turns that water into information and then pours the water out for all of humanity. The sign of Aquarius is very much the sign of humanitarianism, but it's pouring this information out for all of humanity. You know, when we think about the fact that we're going into this age of Aquarius, this is exactly why we are getting flooded with information, especially through the form of technology. Okay. Now, also, the sign of Aquarius has, as I said, it's like the sign of humanitarianism. It's the sign of like the whole team, like the whole tribe, but also very much the sign of individualism. Like if you can picture a group of people who all get together because they've got a purpose, they've got something that they want to, you know, say they want to bring in change to the world, and they come together to, you know, set the intentions for this and work together. But yet everyone in this group is totally and completely unique from each other. Okay. You could have the punk rock kid and the super conservative lady and the, you know, the, whatever, and all different types of people with purple hair, people with brown hair, people with all different kinds of styles of people with new ideas. As I've said so many times before, it's like, I just picture it, you know, if I was to walk into a room full of anywhere between 10 and 100,000 of Aries, I could see the similarities between them. Or put me in this room with that many Cancers, I can see the similarities between them. You put me in a room with all those Pisces, I can see the similarities. You put that many people that are, you know, all have this Aquarius energy in a room together, they're all going to be very, very unique from each other, but they also will tend to come up with these ideas. Okay. Now, when we think about this Aquarius energy and it's the revolutionary energy, and please do not get me wrong, this certainly does not mean that everybody who's an Aquarius out there is gonna, you know, be the genius, or, you know, is always the one to come up with ideas, or always works in a team, because there's so much more to people's natal chart than just their sun sign. But this sign of Aquarius, as an example here, I've got two siblings who are Aquariuses, and they don't mind me sharing this. One of them is really great ideas, super creative ideas, and loves to work with the community. Then another sibling who's got a position at a really large resort, and her job is to have, it's like she has her team. She's the team manager and loves her team. Every time we're together, she's like, my team, which is very, very Aquarius energy. It tends to be, even though it's not an emotional energy, and again, please don't get me wrong, I know plenty of emotional Aquariuses, because a lot of that's going to depend on their moon sign or something, you know, that could counteract this. But for the most part, the sign of Aquarius is not associated with emotions. It's, again, the sign that would detach. In fact, one of the main keywords to describe the sign of Aquarius is to detach. Sometimes you'll see it described as cold and detached. That cold energy comes from, again, when the sun is going through the sign of Aquarius, it's cold. Again, for most of us in the world, but it's also that Saturn energy, Saturnian influence of cold. Okay. And it's not necessarily meant to describe it as, oh, that person's just cold and detached. It's more like that energy that will detach from some sort of an emotional thing to understand the situation intellectually. In fact, in many books I have read, and I know that there's some debate around this, but in many books I have read that it's like the sign of Aquarius is a sign that's kind of most directly associated with astrology. Okay. And the reason, I've also read a lot that Pisces is as well, but it's the sign of Aquarius being ruled by Uranus. Okay. Uranus is god of the sky. Okay. But also the study of astrology. And I know this is one of my favorite things about the study of astrology, is that it can really help you, you know, say you're in some sort of a very emotional situation, and you can pull up your natal chart and look at your transits and go, oh, okay, I see it now. Like, this is part of my karma. I can kind of detach from the emotions and find the lesson in the situation. This sign of Aquarius is like constantly seeking a higher level of truth. And going back to that, the fact that we are, going into this age of Aquarius, when we think about what we're going through right now, I mean, more and more, hallelujah, more and more and more people are starting to realize that we've been kind of functioning under a lot of corruption, and this higher level of truth is being exposed, and people are seeking it, especially through information that's coming through technology. That's very Aquarius energy. So how have you grown in these ways? Maybe you're getting more comfortable with technology. Maybe you've been using too much technology and you need to let some of that go. On that note, I'm just blown away. I mean, I'm not, because I understand why it's happening, but all this, artificial intelligence stuff, the AI stuff, it's almost impossible to avoid it. And I know some people are really, really using it and gaining a lot from it. But I want to point this out that when I don't know, it was a month ago or something like that, and I don't even remember exactly what my question was, but I wasn't at home, so I didn't have my books, but I think I Googled something like, when's the last time Uranus was in Virgo? Something like that. I know it was Uranus. Anyway, then when you use Google these days, which I don't try not to use Google, but sometimes we do, instead of giving you a website, on top, it'll give you the AI answer. Like, here's what AI says to the answer. And I'm looking at the answer and I'm going, wait a minute here. This is not accurate. I know, because I know the basics of, how long it takes Uranus to go through one zodiac sign and so on. I'm like, this is not right. And then as soon as I got home, I pulled out my ephemeris, where we can see where the planets were, when there, that sort of thing. And the AI was 100% wrong. And I mean, I knew it was in the first place, but I just needed to double check myself, because I thought I could trust, something of this advanced technology. And not only that, but I've also just recently, within the last few nights, was listening to a podcast with this lady, and she said basically the same thing. She didn't have the same inquiry, but it was something like, I can't remember what it was, but regardless, she was saying, I couldn't believe it. I had to prove. She was talking about Grok, I think is an AI communication thing. And she said she had to prove Grok, if that's the right name, wrong. She's going, no, that is not, you're wrong. It is in this book, and then finally she was able to prove to the AI that it was wrong. And so that is something, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel like it's important, because I know a lot of people are totally relying on AI and technology for answers of this nature, of all kinds of strange questions. But apparently it's not very trustworthy. So keep that in mind. I think it's really important that we all hold on to our books, our good old books. But at the same time, I also think it's important that we at least familiarize ourselves with this form of technology, because otherwise I feel like we're going to get left behind, because the world is clearly just going in that direction. So with that said, maybe you've grown in ways that you're kind of familiarizing or getting comfortable with using, I don't know, a new form of social media or something like that, something that involves technology. Or maybe you want to let some of that go. Maybe you've been super absorbed in it. I have a friend who's like literally addicted to Chat GPT or something like that. I don't even know the names of these things. Clearly I haven't used them, but it's like she's almost addicted to it. And if that's the case for you, you might want to let some of that go. On this, okay, totally different theme here. Let's say you have been really, honoring it. It could be a very good time to honor yourself if you've been trying to understand emotional situations from an intellectual perspective, because I think that's also something that there's so much craziness going on in the world, and it's not going to stop. Things are really starting to pick up the pace here. And I know it's emotional for a lot of people who are really involved in it with their own political opinions or their own spiritual opinions and that sort of thing. And I do feel that if we can sort of detach from the emotional stuff that is so easy to get wrapped up in, and look at it from, look at it from an astrological perspective. That's an intellectual perspective for sure. Okay. Or maybe you've been hanging out with more people. Maybe you've just been, getting more together with a tribe or community and networking. If that's the case, you might want to honor yourself for that. But again, if that's been too much of what's going on in your life, you might want to let some of that go with the waning moon. I hope this is all making sense to you guys, because this is really powerful stuff we're working with here. Okay, more than anything, how have you grown in these ways? What do you want to let go of? And not only that, but also take into consideration, of course, we all experience this as a collective. We all experience this, full moon at 16 degrees, 59 minutes, Aquarius, but it's so unique to each and every one of us. If you're familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back to review the video recording to see which area of your life this is specifically manifesting for you. What theme of your life is this manifesting through? Which house in your natal chart is this manifesting through? Okay, so there's that. Let's go ahead and pull up the chart here. And if you'd like to schedule a reading with me, you can schedule through my website, erinwageastrology.com. I always leave a link in the description below. Okay, so what I work with here is called geocentric Western astrology. With that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. This right here, these are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies out here. Okay, when we go in the wheel just a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all those planets and celestial bodies will be being through onto Earth at the time of this full moon. Okay, so let's start here. This right here is the symbol for the moon. Here's the glyph for the sign of Aquarius. In fact, if you look at that glyph, this sign of Aquarius is a very electrical energy. In fact, when we talk about body parts, we'll get into this. This sign of Aquarius has a lot to do with our electrical bodies, or just electric energy, period. And the symbol, yes, it can, I think the first assumption is that it's the water bearer pouring out the water and it's the waves of water, but it is also a representation of like radio waves. Okay. A lot of Aquarius people, whether there's an Aquarius rising, I'd say more so for an Aquarius sun or Aquarius moon, or even Mercury and Aquarius, Mars and Aquarius, they have a sensitivity to electronics, or they also have like weird little electrical spasms go on in their body. It's because it's of an electrical nature. Okay, so, and by the way, if you're looking at your natal chart, look, there's the glyph for the sign of Aquarius. You want to see which house it's coming through in your own natal chart to see what theme of your life is being activated or illuminated by this full moon. Okay, now over here, we've got the sun at 16 degrees, 59 minutes, Leo. So it happens every time we have a full moon, the sun and the moon are exactly opposite each other. And happy solar return to all of you Leos out there. Absolutely love that energy. Okay, now this is why full moons are so powerful. We've got the two brightest lights in the sky beaming right at each other, facing each other. They're embracing the growth, and they're also ready to let go of things. And when we do this as a collective, if you're including like beneficial manifestations, this is what I always do in my journal. Every single full moon and new moon, I write in my journal. And of course, I'm focusing on my own manifestations, but I always include, especially for the sign of Aquarius, include something that's like manifesting, more grace for humanity, that sort of thing. Okay. Now, the thing that I've got to get to first, if you just look at the chart, as soon as I open it up, I went, holy smokes, because what we've got is a kite. Okay, you see this triangle right here. Okay, that is a grand trine. To be very technical, it is a grand air trine, and I will get into the details of that momentarily. But we've also got these two sextiles that are coming off. One's going from Pluto over to Saturn and Neptune. One's coming from Uranus going up to Saturn and Neptune. And it looks like a kite. And we've got Saturn and Neptune opposing Mars. So they're all of these planets, celestial bodies, are having this really powerful conversation. In fact, let me start by saying, if you have anything prominent, especially if it is your sun, your moon, or your rising, I mean, it really could be Mercury or Mars or Venus, but especially if it's your sun, your moon, or your rising, between, let's go with 1 to 3 degrees in any zodiac sign, that thing is getting highly activated, okay? Because all of these very, very strong power players are between 1 and 3 degrees. Let's start with Uranus, since Uranus is one of the lords of this full moon, being Aquarius's ruler. Okay, so Uranus, recently moved into the sign of Gemini. And to be very specific here, Uranus is only going to be in the sign of Gemini until it is, oh boy, September 1st, I believe, early September. Then Uranus retrogrades back into the sign of Taurus. And then April of next year, then Uranus will be in the sign of Gemini for the next 6.5 years. But Uranus is peeking his head in that Gemini door. Uranus, again, influences things that are of a very revolutionary, often rebellious or radical nature and electrical nature. Okay. The sign of Gemini is the sign of communication, very much a sign that's associated with social media. Okay. Or even email, that sort of text messages. In fact, over here, Aquarius is associated with things like social media as well, and things like email and text messages. But Aquarius is more the technological advancements of that, something of that kind of nature, versus Gemini is more the communication value of it. Okay, so Uranus, who influences these radical changes, this is why I'm saying there's going to be massive changes in how we communicate with each other. Things like social media. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the ones that are, popular right now, X and Instagram or whatever, if there is some sort of over these next 6.5 years, those fade out because something way more radical is invented. Okay, so there's that. But he's shooting this ray over here to Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto influences the death and rebirth process. Pluto influences the deep, powerful transformation. Going through the sign of Aquarius for 19 years. I kid you not, we're going to see some major changes in technological advancements. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was some sort of a technological crash, like all of a sudden internet breaks. I'm talking about within the next 19 years. But then it is kind of like reinvented, or with something that's a little more powerful, or maybe something that the power is back in the people's hands. Again, the sign of Aquarius is very much the sign of humanity, really. But they are making this incredibly powerful trine together. Then we've got Pluto coming down here and making this very strong trine to Mars in Libra. So Mars, aggressive, okay? Mars, planet of war. Mars is what influences our muscles and our adrenals and makes us take action. Okay, going through the sign of Libra, which Mars is pretty much very debilitated in the sign of Libra, because Libra just wants balance and harmony. Libra's like, chill out, Mars. But Mars is like, oh, we gotta go. But overall, this is another air sign. I'm thinking about this especially Uranus and Pluto in these air signs. Mars is, I can't remember exactly how long, in Libra for about a month or so. But overall, Uranus and Pluto in these air signs, I keep thinking about what is going on in the air, the chemtrails and just the stuff we've been, there's so much that would be here forever if I was to talk about all the little details. I think it's Tennessee and Florida have now banned, these chemtrails, and a lot of talk about, it's weather modification, and there is a whole whirlwind of evidence to prove that. But they've been banned there. But then there's still airspace where the federal airspace or something like that, where they can still spray. And there's so much commotion around all this right now. And I do think that that's something that this full moon is opening up, this something very well could change with that. Again, not on the night of the full moon, but I think more information surrounding that kind of, pollution in the air is coming to the surface. And especially since this trine's only going to be that strong for about a day, but a couple days, but still Mars activating it. Okay. So that's really, really strong stuff. It could be potentially, keep in mind Mercury's in retrograde, we'll get there. But it could be time for social gatherings, social events, but you might want to be mindful of anybody coming in with aggressions in a social setting in the days surrounding this transit. Okay, now over here, here's Saturn. And I have to talk about these guys together because they're so tightly conjunct. So Saturn is what it is. Again, he's also a lord of this full moon because he is one of Aquarius's rulers. Saturn is what influences that cold, rigid energy of responsibilities. Going through the sign of Aries. I mean, Aries is the warrior of the zodiac. And it's like, okay, think about it. It's a militant kind of energy. Aries wants to go revved up and fast and hurry without thinking about repercussions. Saturn is saying, whoa, patience, buddy, slow down. Saturn is also very debilitated in the sign of Aries. And all of these things are in retrograde, making it even start, not all of them. I'll point that out in a minute. But then we've got Neptune here, who influences things like dreams and visions and psychic powers and spirituality and mysticism. Okay. And going through the sign of Aries, I kind of feel like Neptune is dampening some of this militant energy down. But at the same time, the combination of these things, if you think about Neptune influencing visions, okay, very, very creative natured in energy. Like we think about Neptune as kind of directly associated with things like Reiki or any kind of spiritual work, but it's also about creating the vision to get there. And Aries is saying, let's go. But then we've got Saturn there that says, yeah, we can do this, but we have to take the time to build this properly. Okay. And the combination of all these things, especially the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I think is really influencing an incredible amount of, what's the word I'm looking for here? An opportunity for creativity. If there's something that you are trying to create, of course, it's going to be so unique for each and every one of us. I know I've got some artists that I've given several readings to, authors of books, people building their own houses, people building things like earth ships and all kinds of really cool stuff. Creativity, as long as you can be patient, but still have the force to go through, is what I'm gathering from the combination of these energies. And again, so these guys are in retrograde and Pluto is in retrograde. Think about when you want to understand a planet that's in retrograde. Think about when you're walking forward, you're just walking forward, right? But then when you walk backwards, it's just not as graceful. Okay, that's very similar to the celestial, when the planets, when they are in retrograde. They're not as graceful, and they can actually be, I mean, if I'm going to be totally honest, can be a little more dangerous, especially since we're talking about all these like super gnarly power players here. Okay, then we can't leave this out. There's this very strong opposition going to Mars. Mars opposition with Saturn is gnarly in and of itself, but then we've got Neptune there, again, is kind of dampening it down. This Aries energy here, this is another one where Neptune and Saturn, they're both going to retrograde back into Pisces later this year. I believe it's Saturn retrogrades into Pisces in, September, October. I can't remember exactly. And then Neptune, I think, retrogrades back into Pisces in November. But regardless, the fact that they're kind of tick-tocking back and forth, things are also very, very, very strong. And what it is it's, if you can imagine, you like we were talking about walking forward, what you put your foot into this room, okay? Like you've been in this one room for years and okay, I know this room really well now. Then you open up the door to go into the next room and all of a sudden everything's totally different, a completely different setup, different colors, different, everything, temperature, different, everything. You put your foot in our door and you're like, whoa, this is going to be really weird. And then you're like, I'll be back. I'll be back. Okay. So you go back into the room that you've been in for a while. And then eventually you go into that new room. That is what I'm talking about. Like this, especially because of the moving into a new sign and then retrograding back and then moving into the new sign with these power players. This is what I'm talking about. Massive change for the collective, but also for us as individuals. Okay. Again, especially if you've got your sun, I mean, really for everybody, it doesn't matter what your natal chart looks like, for everybody, this is happening. But especially if you've got something between 0 and 2 to 3 degrees of any zodiac sign, because these guys are activating, especially if it's your sun, your moon, or your rising. Okay. But then also keep in mind that this opposition, especially between Saturn and Mars for, let's just go between August 7th to August 12th, that's a lot of aggression there. These are the malefics, okay? And we've got some more uplifting stuff coming up here. But it's kind of rough. That's what I'm saying. If you were to go out to a social gathering, there might be some, especially like masculine, like raw, like energy going on, dominance, that sort of thing. And the reason I say that is because so much of this chart is fire and air, like fire signs and air signs. Those are the masculine signs. But then you take into consideration that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn, and Mars are all talking to each other. Those are all very dominant energies. Okay. And in fact, there's no Earth. There's no planets in Earth signs at all. Very, very buzzy electrical energy, which that is really what creates the change. That's what, like, metaphysically speaking, it's activating us ready to make just changes for everything on Earth. So how do you want to change? Especially if you, again, are kind of familiar with your chart. If you want to schedule a reading with me, erinwageastrology.com, I can show you the area of your life that this is coming through and how it more specifically, would be impacting your own life. But also, again, don't mean to be repetitive, but we're about to see massive changes just on Earth, period. Okay, so there's that. Now let's get to this beautiful stuff over here. Here's Jupiter and Venus conjunct in the sign of Cancer. They both really like the sign of Cancer. Let's start with Venus. So Venus, most people recognize Venus as the planet of love. She influences things like beauty, things that are of a lovely nature, okay? The relationships, things in, romance and heart pitter patter, but also things like makeup or poetry or beautiful music or beautiful scenery. Okay. And the sign of Cancer is like, it's a sweetheart kind of energy. Okay. The sign of Cancer, it's a very by nature empath. Okay. It's a sign that tends to come with a lot of natural compassion. Okay. And so Venus does very, very well in this very feminine sign. Okay. So that's, if you got anything especially between 10, let's go down to 9 up to 15 degrees, Cancer, you got Venus and Jupiter sitting on that thing. Okay. So then Jupiter here, the great benefic. Okay. Jupiter's the one that we receive like the most beneficial energy from. Jupiter influences things like like charity, abundance, okay, wisdom, expansion of things, okay, and exalts in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer all the way until late June of next year, 2026. But this is Venus is considered like the lesser benefic. Don't mean to make Venus sound like she's any lesser than Jupiter, but she's called the lesser benefic, where Jupiter's the great benefic. Okay, and they're the two benefics. And they're together, all squeezed up together. In fact, Jupiter's in some forms of astrology considered to be associated with the husband. Okay, so it's like a lovely energy coming through here. And that if you've got something, again, depending on what it is, but if it's something like your Mercury or something that's prominent, you have this you very well could be receiving some abundance, some love, some beauty, okay, something going on there. And again, look to see where the sign of Cancer comes through your natal chart, because that area of your chart is getting some nice, lovely energy coming through. Okay, let's go to Mercury. Mercury is also in retrograde. So again, picture Mercury's walking backwards. Mercury is like data processing. Okay, Mercury is where we receive information through the nerves, go down to our spinal cord, information to the spinal cord, information comes back out through the nerves so we can communicate that information. That's what Mercury really has rulership over. Okay, that's why when Mercury's in retrograde, generally speaking, intense things that require a lot of communication are not necessarily always, I try not to put too much emphasis on this. Especially, okay, let's look at it this way. If you've got something prominent near 4 degrees Leo in your chart, then for you, it might not be the most ideal time to be having such a serious conversation or a business meeting or, working on your book or something like that. Or if you're a Gemini or a Virgo rising, or it could be also a Leo rising, then this Mercury retrograde might be a little more intense for you. But for the general, like, some people won't even work. People have their own businesses. I actually know an astrologer who won't work when Mercury's in retrograde. She won't give readings. I don't take it to that level personally, but there's that. Let's talk about the benefits here. So Mercury, again, data processing, communication in the sign of Leo. Leo's the leader of the zodiac. Leo's the grand lion that shares information boldly, okay? That's people are born there with their Mercury in Leo. Often they don't hold back from what they want to say. They get the information out, okay? So there's that. They can converse boldly. All right, so we are receiving that. Look to see if you got anything near 4 degrees Leo in your natal chart. Okay, now let's talk about Chiron in the nose. Okay, quickly, Chiron, the wounded healer. Chiron is also in retrograde. So all these celestial bodies, all the retrogrades here. We got Chiron, we got Saturn, we got Neptune, we got Pluto, we got Mercury, all in retrograde. We also have the nodes, but the nodes are almost always in retrograde, so that's not that big of a deal. But Chiron is the wounded healer. To sum this up, it's like the wounds from early childhood. Chiron has an influence on those things, but also has the influence on healing from those wounds from early childhood. Okay, so Chiron in retrograde, and Chiron's in retrograde, I think it's all the way till the end of December, maybe even January 1st. I think it's like December 30th or December 31st. Chiron moving very slowly in retrograde. I think he's going to go all the way back to 22 degrees Aries. If you've got anything prominent between 22 and 27 degrees Aries, just generalization here, maybe it's time to reevaluate the healing journey, or maybe something is coming up that you hadn't realized before regarding your healing journey or wounds from early childhood. That sort of thing could definitely go on. Okay, the nodes. North node going through Pisces, south node going through Virgo, all the way until the end of July of 2026. Okay, north node. If you've got anything between 0 and 18 degrees Virgo in your natal chart, some point between now and July of next year, that south node, the drain point, will go over that thing and wants to take something away from that. For example, let's say it's your Mercury. You got your Mercury at 16 degrees Virgo, and all of a sudden the south node goes over that Mercury. Again, Mercury's data processing, mental function. All of a sudden, it's like something needs to be released about your data processing or your communication skills or your mental function, or maybe they're just not functioning optimally, or maybe, the sign of Virgo also, it rules very important parts of the body, the intestines and the liver. It could be a really good time because the south node, again, it's like a magnetic drain point, could be a really good time for detoxing those parts of the body. Maybe if you got your Mars in Virgo and the south node goes over your Mars, and all of a sudden you're not as revved up, your loss of energy or something like that. Okay, so there's that. Now, north node, Pisces is the mystic. Pisces is the psychic. Pisces is the sign of oneness and dreams and visions, okay? We're all receiving that pump coming through. That north node pumps energy in through that sign of Pisces, again, till the end of July. If you've got anything between 0 and 18 degrees Pisces, that north node will be pumping more of whatever that is into your life between now and July of next year. Also, which houses, again, are the sign of Pisces and Virgo coming through? That's going to get pretty serious coming up here in September. We're going to have some pretty heavy eclipses. One eclipse, lunar eclipse, total lunar eclipse, I believe it's September 7th. And then a partial solar eclipse, I believe, is September 21st. And they're going to be activating the Pisces Virgo axis. So that's another area that you may want to pay attention to in your chart. Okay, so I think I will leave that there. Let's get to body parts. So the sign of Aquarius, let's start here, rules the calves and the ankles. Okay, you'll notice a lot of Aquarius people. And when I say Aquarius people, it could be Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon, something prominent in the sign of Aquarius. Sometimes they'll have beautiful, perfect ankles, and sometimes not so much. A lot of times Aquarius people will end up with problems with the ankles, sprained ankles as a kid or even as an adult, broken ankles, whatever it is, swollen ankles. And that leads me to where I want to go next, is that the sign of Aquarius is said to rule over what we could describe as the electrical body. When when we were just looking at the chart, how Aquarius and Leo are opposite each other. Leo rules the heart. Okay, now there's actual proof of this now through an organization called Heart Math, who have been able to prove the electric pulses that are coming from the heart. Well, that is Leo, the polarity between Leo and Aquarius. Leo's pumping the heart. Leo rules the heart, the function of the heart. And that goes out to this electrical body, like the toroidal field. Basically envision like a massive energetic electrical donut around you. Not anything, that you could touch or feel, at least not in this realm, but that's like the shape of it. And it's going off in every which direction. Energy's coming in, energy's going out. Okay. And it is said that electrical body is really how we receive the connection of those planets and celestial bodies. Okay. It's picking up the sine wave through electromagnetic fields. Okay. So with that said, that the sign of Aquarius tends to, again, be very, very sensitive to things that are a lot of times especially moon in Aquarius, you'll notice a lot of moon in Aquarius people have a very strong tendency to get addicted to, video games or whatever, something using technology. That can happen for a lot of Mercury in Aquarius as well. But it's like the sensitivity, they'll have like weird little zappy things that go through their body that are hard to diagnose, that sort of thing. But also it's the circulation, because again, the calves and the ankles being ruled by the sign of Aquarius, depending on what's going on in the natal chart, it's going to be totally unique to everybody. But let's say, for example, you've got, I don't know, let's go with Saturn in Aquarius or something like that. And energy, like there's stagnation going on that gets stuck down in the ankles. That's it. The circulation is basically being run through this electrical force. Okay. And so with that said, this right here is rosemary, which you can buy rosemary at any, little herb shop or whatever. I just happen to grow it here where we live. But rosemary is definitely one of my favorite, like the essence of it. And I think it's what is called a neurotropic, which like stimulates or activates stuff in the brain. But overall, it's just a lovely scent. But it can be good for so many different things. Rosemary can be, but it also helps the circulation. Like if people are dealing with even something like edema or something like just swollen calves and ankles, or just overall, you can feel the force of like energy getting stuck down there, and you need to work on circulation. Rosemary can be really good for that. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just stuff that I have learned from my wonderful teachers over the years. Okay, next up, I want to mention nettles. Unfortunately, all the nettles around here they're already decomposing. It's too late in the year to harvest any nettles, but I do have a nettles tincture. Nettles are great for so many different things as well. Nettles, in fact, I've even heard that nettles have somewhat of an affinity for the kidneys, but nettles are so dense in minerals. When we think about this highly electrical energy, what grounds electricity? Minerals. Okay. Nettles can be great for like grounding out. And not only that, it could be great for allergies. Again, nettles are great for all sorts of things. One that I don't have right now is ginkgo biloba, is another really fantastic herb, which ginkgo biloba, that also can like play a role in the circulation. It gets oxygen up into the brain. So that I like ginkgo biloba when I'm like, I got to do something creative, or I got to come up with ideas, what to do for something. That's what I generally will indulge in ginkgo biloba with. Okay, so there's that. One last thing I'm going to mention here, though. This right here is called fullerenol. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fullerenol. It is overall like can help with free radicals, can help. It's a detoxifier. You can put it on your skin as a serum. I take it internally all the time, mostly after I have been exposed to radiation. Okay. And especially since Pluto is going through Aquarius for the next 19 years, Pluto actually is said to have a major influence on radiation. The sign of Aquarius is the sign of technology. So that's why I indulge in full Uranus. I will leave a link for this because, again, it's like, let's say you've been flying on an airplane for hours, you're exposed to radiation. Full Uranus can help with that. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to mention there. Let's get into gemstones. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Aquarius is amethyst. Right here, we've got a couple pieces of amethyst, and then I've also got another piece that looks like this. When I'm doing more like work with my own vessel, with my own, I have not taken I have not worked on other people for energy work. I just don't feel confident enough to do. I love doing astrology, but I don't feel confident enough to do energy work on other people. But I know a lot of people do. And so if that's the case, I feel like this is probably the better like shape or, form of amethyst to work with. But amethyst is great for stimulating the mind. Okay. And what I like to do, I take these guys, the geodes, and I'll put like my little magic morning water. I'll pour my water and let it sit between these guys for however long, while I take a shower or something like that, and then drink the water. It's like charging the water with this. It's, again, amethyst is like stimulating. It's exciting to the body and can also help with intuition and foresight. Okay, so there's that. Now, another one I'm going to mention here, let's go with this guy. This right here is hematite. In fact, I got my hematite earrings on today for this video as well, just for this reason. So hematite is, honestly, let me go back to these guys. When I was really like studying astrology to the point where I was crying because I needed to, get through the program and finish the program because it was really hard work, I would work with these, the hematite and the amethyst. Both of these guys could be great for, again, like especially together for stimulating the brain and, helping you see things like instead of just reading it on a piece of paper, like actually like you see the vision in your mind. But also hematite is super, super protective. You'll notice a lot of people wear hematite bracelets or malas or that sort of thing because it's a protective dark stone. This right here, this isn't, I just put this on because it kind of goes with the earrings. This is pyrite, which is, I mean, you're supposed to use pyrite, but that's not why I put it on. My earrings are hematite though, and I absolutely love them. Okay, now next up, we're going to do this one, angelite. Resonates beautifully with the sign of Aquarius. And what this one I would say, in fact, if you know what celestite is, celestite, it looks like a geode. Celestite kind of looks like this, but it's actually this color. I've got some downstairs. I should have brought it up. That's what this comes from, the angelite. And it's like, okay, let's say you're somebody who has, and it resonates beautifully with the sign of Aquarius. Celestite is more for Gemini energy, but you could use celestite as well. They're both air signs, but angelite is like, let's say you have been detaching too much from natural, normal empathy. Okay, you've been too analytical, too, just looking at things intellectually and not feeling the actual, say somebody's, telling you like, gosh, you're mean, you seem heartless or that sort of thing. Angelite is really, it's going to up the ante with the compassion and the empathy. And so this can be a really good stone for somebody who's got the energy of the sign of Aquarius, where they're just, they are cold and detached. They don't mean to be. It's just part of, so angelite can be great for that. Okay, I think I covered everything I wanted to. Again, if you'd like to schedule an astrology reading, we can, any kind of astrology reading, whatever you want to go over. My favorite are people who just want to understand themselves better. And I love teaching people how to read their own natal chart. But we can go through progressions, transits, medical astrology. You want to know what kind of gemstones to work with. You want to know what part of your body you should be concerned about, that sort of thing. Just schedule through my website, erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.